Mr. Ben Justman, thank you so much for being a playable character in a sea of non-playable characters, the founder of Peony Lane Wine, and I thank you for joining me today, sir.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Been looking to connect for a while, so this should be fun.
Yes. So you have, we were just talking about scarcity, obviously the wine and Bitcoin trading cards, and Bitcoiners know scarcity all too well. But I would love for you to just, first off, for people that don't know you, give us the backstory, the background on the wine. That intrigues a lot of people that, Bitcoiners are not. So it's a really cool space to be in because I'm sure you've had some interesting conversations over the years just with people, whether it's you're accepting Bitcoin or you're talking about it and they come to you from all different facets all over the world, whatever it might be. So I'd love for you to kind of give that background of how you find yourself today you're the only winemaker I know that's really a Bitcoiner, accepts Bitcoin, stuff like that. I personally don't know of any others. So how did this all come to be?
Well, I probably started out as a quest to understand personal finance in basically right after college. Just started learning about personal finance, not wanting to take a ton of risk, doing index investments, and kind of just going along, helping friends with personal finance. And then in 2019, the repo rate spike dropped my high interest savings accounts down to zero as far as interest goes. And that was kind of my wake up call. I didn't know anything about Bitcoin at the time, but I realized that the foundational things that I built on, like just have your high interest savings account for a few months of expenses and you'll keep up with inflation, that was rugged out from under me. Most people probably don't care too much about going from 2% to 0% interest, but it really kind of pulled the foundation of what I was building out from under me. And so I started looking and randomly was living with a Bitcoiner who was just kind of going down the rabbit hole. We had very differing politics, so I didn't I kind of knew he was there, but I didn't take it too seriously at the time. I do remember him coming upstairs and flexing, saying he bought more Bitcoin during the March of 2020 crash, which is a foundational memory for me. But then around that time, I was also starting my winery, which was kind of building on the back of what my dad had built. And when I was 8, we moved to a farm in Western Colorado where my dad retired to work 10 hours a day growing all his own food. And in that, got convinced to plant grapes and was making great wine as a hobby. There was a couple years where he sold it. And so through learning about personal finance, kind of learning about myself, just realized that I wanted to have a business. And the biggest regret in my life would be not pursuing something of that order. So the winery was kind of sitting there as a business that was ready to build and just kind of expand off of what my dad had been doing. I'd never made wine before. And the only confidence I really had was that the wine my dad was making from our Pinot Noir vineyard was getting, there was a sommelier who moved to my town because he tried my dad's wine and thought it was so amazing. He's like, I can't believe there's this good of wine in Colorado. I'm moving there. And so knowing my dad had no sense of taste or smell, I was confident that I could figure it out if he could figure it out. So wine takes 2 years to get going. So in 2019, I started the winery, started making wine. In 2020, I moved home to my hometown and built a house with my dad, all while working on the winery. And when I moved back home, I moved in with a good friend from high school who I considered to be one of the smartest people I knew. And it turns out he was a Bitcoiner. And so we get into all these deep geopolitical, ethical, monetary conversations. And I just started learning about it while I'm building my house. I'm listening to 4 hours of Bitcoin podcasts a day and just kind of just going down the rabbit hole. At first it was he's hedging against financial calamity. And then as I get further and further along, I realized that that's an inevitability and that Bitcoin is the best way to get around that. And so my Bitcoin knowledge kind of just happened right alongside the winemaking venture. And my first year of sales in 2021, I remember I had one guy ask if I accepted crypto, and I didn't have a wallet that I didn't know what I was doing
Mm-hmm.
really. I didn't have a wallet to accept it. And I remember saying, "I'll accept your Bitcoin," and like yelled after him, but he was gone. He didn't care. But the next year, I was really so this. I was mostly doing sales at farmers markets, seasonally, so during the summers. And the next year, I had a Bitcoin accepted here sign and did a few sales. A lot of it was boomers telling me that I should be careful because Bitcoin was down 50%. And I think my
Oh.
conviction really just stood the test of time because I'd helped so many of my friends with their personal finances and realized like how much I'm not an expert, but like I'd done the research to kind of understand how to like play the game. And I knew that no one knew what they were doing in a fiat finance sense and how hard it was to understand Bitcoin that no one was willing to put in that work. And so my conviction was just built on the level of incompetence or just like lack of knowledge that I knew other people had. So whenever other people told me I was
Mm-hmm.
crazy, it was like, well, look, I've seen what most people do, and I think that's crazy. So yeah, I guess the third year, then I had a Bitcoin preferred sign. I got Crypto Cloaks to make me one of those because I thought accepted here was a little passive. And since then, I started selling wine for Bitcoin online, and that all started organically. Like Bitcoiners just started asking, "Hey, can I buy your wine with Bitcoin?" And
Wow.
of course, I say yes because I want more Bitcoin. And it's just kind of scaled from there, and it's in the process of creating a lot of freedom and a successful business for me.
That is incredible. That's yeah, wow. And the cool part is, I think that what people, at least in my opinion, what people get lost with that are new to Bitcoin or just coming into Bitcoin, like that's all happened in what the last 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 to 5, like your learning journey starting in 2019, but that's a short amount of time. That time is going to pass anyway, and people think like, oh, I missed the train, or I can never learn all that, or whatever it might be, that kind of like these stories we tell ourselves. So I think that your story just shows again, but between starting the business, learning about Bitcoin, all those things, I think there's a really cool lessons just within there. In saying that, do you like, was constant learning ingrained in you by your dad or someone in your life, or like what was, because it's not totally normal for people to be listening to hours and hours of personal development or Bitcoin talk while they're working with their hands. That's actually not super common probably nowadays. So what was that, something that was already just kind of instilled you to constantly keep growing or keep learning, or where did that come from?
My dad always had the radio on, and I was always interested in like the longer form stories that would come up. Um,
Mm,
I think I've just always kind of been curious and into math. And once I started budgeting for myself, I got really into like spreadsheets and stuff. Not in like a super deep, like I'm the best spreadsheet guy in the world, but I just always found it fun to track
yeah.
stuff. Uh, so I don't know, but also I remember as a kid, like I would collect pennies and I went to the bank. The like peak of that was I went to the bank with my mom and I was trying to get her to get me $20 of pennies. And she thought that was insane. That's so many pennies. But uh, the bank only had $10. So I got $10 and sorted them out into decades. I don't have any, like I've got a couple pennies that are worth like 16 cents each. I don't have much, but I always like just had the idea of they're going to stop making pennies one day, and if I just have these at all, I just do this work now and I hold on to them forever and I just like set them over there and forget about them. Maybe they'll be worth something one day. And they probably won't, but I don't know. I guess I just always had that mindset going on.
Like, what's the one thing that you've learned just in the last handful of years of starting the wine business, and not the entrepreneurship side of things? What's something that you've kind of learned? Maybe your biggest learning lessons, maybe things that people should know, because not everyone has a business or not everyone can start a business, just for whatever reason that might be. But what are some big lessons that you've kind of learned? You're like, man, I wish that I could impart this on everyone else. We want to thank our sponsor. This show is presented by Bitcoin Trading Cards, an orange pill in a pack, making talking about things that normally make you want to cry fun and easy. The scarcest and most educational cards to ever exist. Available now.
Um, I think a lot of it is conviction and just going through the hard times and making it to the other side is the success rate of it. And um, that's easier said than done because like certain businesses, you're just going to lose a bunch of money, and it's like, why would you keep going? But with wine, one of the things that really drew me in was that I knew I was going to have to wait 2 years to do any sales. And I'd had a couple side hustles that didn't go anywhere. I was kind of looking for something super committing, but I also knew that having time to like figure out how to run a business was going to be super helpful. So it meant a lot of hard work working, doing the business and a full-time job for 2 years. But what it resulted in is being very just committed, because there was no like point where it could just be a negative, like, oh, you can just be done. It's no, you've committed for 2 years and now you have wine product, and like you're just going to slowly build from there. And so um, a lot of businesses aren't so low time preference. It's go get sales, go get everything you can right away. And wine is consistently looking 2, 3 years out at a minimum, with production, storage, everything like that. So as slow as you can build, probably the better in a lot of ways. I mean, I know there's a lot of build fast and break things, but if you're like, I think what I'm trying to do is not get super rich from a business. I think that running a business is just what I want to do with my life. And I get a lot of funny reactions to that, because the like success in business is a lot of times making a ton of money. But for me, it's a positive lifestyle. And I think if I enjoy what I'm doing, put in the hard work, and doing something that I consider myself to be pretty good at, that money will come. It's not the seeking of money that is why I'm into business. It's the seeking of a lifestyle that I enjoy, and I think money will be a byproduct of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. It's like I've been thinking of we just recently made the decision to homeschool our children. We have 4 little ones. They're 7, 5, 3, and 1, and they were in school in a private school for a couple of years. And it's just like into my intuition, like I just knew, like, okay, this isn't forever. This is not like we'd reassess every quarter, like every year. And just logistically, there's reasons we were doing those things. But I just knew, like, deep down. And John Taylor Gatto was a guy who was a big not a proponent. He's a I don't know. Well, he's a proponent of homeschool, I guess, but he's an old school teacher
Mm.
from New York that was in the public school system and writes all about, and has written the last 30 years all about compulsory government schools. And I went through a government school my entire life. My wife went through a Catholic school, but I went through the government run schools. And the older I got, the more I just was like, what are we doing? Just fighting everybody, and it just made no sense. And he was always saying that in some of his books he talks about, so those are great books Bitcoiners have to read. However, at the same time, he was just saying that fiat world, like you said, like a lot of these businesses, it's just like constant growth at all costs. Put worse ingredients in. Obviously, we could talk about the wine or the food or whatever it is, like worse and worse ingredients to keep your profits up. And you've got to go public, so I need a better earnings call every 90 days. And in there, the first book from 30 years ago, he basically says, which I've been thinking for a while, and which you just alluded to, is why it made me think of it, which is if you're constantly having to grow and just like do all these things just to like beat someone over the head with whatever, I gotta rake some more cash away from you, or some more pennies from you, then you're dying. Like you've missed a point of community at the end of the day. And there's a delicate balancing act between really probably capitalism and communal living in a sense, where that's a whole different rabbit hole we could go down. But we're built in this weird structure, so it makes the fiat world makes you do business like this weird way. So in in saying that, do you think, feel free to comment on any of that, but also been the response, I guess, from even legacy, again, like this legacy Fiat world of businesses around you? I don't know, maybe you're involved in the chamber, any national stuff, or any legacy winemakers or local people. Has there been any pushback or any support from people being like, oh, this Bitcoin thing, like, what do you got going on over here, Ben?
So I'm in an AVA. It's a American Viticultural Association, and there's I forget 10 or 15 wineries, and jumping into this, all those wineries are um, for the most part older people. There's a few younger people that are a little bit breaking the mold and trying to scale things up, but there are a lot of, I say they're older people just to say that like I grew up with their kids, and so they are one already kind of an organization that's a lot of, if we there's a there's a small pie here. We're not worried about our slice. We're about growing the pie. But also, man, it's cool to have a young person that grew up here that's here to like expand and
Wow.
build this winery region. And so grew into this business with a lot of at least not competitiveness within the wine scene, because we're all in this together in a very local region. And then you even expand to greater Colorado wine scene, is we're all fighting against the perception that, one, maybe people don't even know about Colorado wine, or two, they had like this one winery's cheap stuff and thought all Colorado wine was bad. So we're all kind of working together to build the perception of our area up together. And then within that, I'm making low intervention wine. So I have a slightly different thesis to winemaking as everyone else, in that I'm not adding anything to it. I'm taking a more hands-off approach and letting the grapes do their thing, which is even further into the, hey, Colorado wine is good. This is literally the grapes from Colorado making good wine. I, as the winemaker, am stepping out of the way. With Bitcoin, I no one is very curious. I've had some people be like, "Oh, wow, that's cool. You're like taking your profits or your sales and like putting them straight into this like other alternative investment." Like that, I don't understand it, but I guess that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know how just like friendly they're being when they say that, because they're not actually interested in learning. But I don't think many of them understand the marketing play, and how just associating with Bitcoin, while they assume it's like, one, not here to stay. And when you're in the wine business, you're thinking, at least when you're in the niche, like making high quality wine business, you're in it for thinking long term. So you don't want to like just jump into some fad that's not going to last. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and two, it's like you're so focused on wine. How do you have the time to learn about Bitcoin? Like we were saying with Fiat business, it's like you're constantly learning about business. You're constantly like worried about farming and all this stuff. It's like, how do I dive into this new rabbit hole, completely change my thinking, and get into this new thing that like I don't have that much motivation to learn about, because life is working fine, my business is growing, all that stuff. Um, so I don't know. I've like selling to Bitcoiners has kind of just worked, because Bitcoiners appreciate wine that has less ingredients in it, makes you feel better. Also, it's people that I enjoy talking to a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like my friends buy my wine almost. And it's also, I didn't realize this going in, but Bitcoiners just love to support Bitcoiners. And looking back on how I've acted, and how like anytime I see a Bitcoin business, I'm like, yeah, I'd rather support you than someone else. And so
Yeah.
it's it's not this tiny niche of people. While it is smaller, there's not like hundreds of millions of Bitcoiners. Um, it's a rabid niche that is not overwhelmed with other competitors. And if it is, it's like we're kind of all on the same team, just like my wine region. We're all trying to build Bitcoin better. We're all trying to have good products and support each other. And so it's this sense of, it's like buying local, but on an international scale, with a growing group of population that is also becoming the most like the future financial elite of the world, and is rabid, dogged about their sense of wanting to propel Bitcoin forward and support other Bitcoiners. And so while I haven't had any, like, no one in the wine world has hardly been curious. It's just like, wow, this is like, just like when I was learning about Bitcoin in the financial perspective, learning about Bitcoin in the business perspective of or marketing perspective is just like, this is a no-brainer. I've seen what other people are doing; they don't understand, and I'm just gonna be over here and like keep doing my thing, and it's gonna work out fine. And all you people that have no idea what's going on, like, go be skeptical. I don't care. This is such a ridiculous no-brainer once you're in it that there's no reason to ever look anywhere else. And the further, the thing I keep saying is just that every time I lean into Bitcoin, Bitcoin leans back into me. And I just want to keep going as further all in Bitcoin as possible. Um, with everything, and like slowly, it's a low time preference business. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to jump everything, and a lot of my sales are to fiat people at farmers markets, but it's still just like every time I do anything getting closer more about Bitcoin, it's great for me. And that's not even like price action. That is absolutely not price action. I've gone all in at all the tops basically since getting in at 2020. Uh, Bitcoin price has done nothing for my business. It's probably hurt me because it's different investment that could have gone towards wine. So I just say like the Bitcoin community has been an insane benefit to me, and it's great because it's just like who I am. It's what I want to dive into, and it's great to be able to mix business with also like the community that I want to be a part of.
So cool. And I can't help but thinking it's going to have a massive impact, your business, just over time. I was, we were just talking about Opti earlier, Simply Bitcoin guys, and, just being directionally correct. You have like the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, and you've already touched on it a little bit. And, it's like, learning marketing, and then you're like, you're touching on that. And then you're like kind of understanding the Bitcoin dynamics of marketing and like what, and just the community that's there. And in just being directionally correct, though, like you said, the highs in the or buying the highs, it's a low time preference thing. You can keep buying the highs, but 10 years from now you're going to be in a better place. And I think that's like that learning, that maturation you really have to go through. And I don't know, it's just fascinating. It just makes me think of so many different things. But what's the biggest like, I don't know, I'm trying to think how to say it, but what's the biggest challenge, I guess, of just the wine business in general? Like what are the things? Obviously, like there's weather, things of that nature, some of the obvious ones. But what's been some of the stuff where the last like 5 years you're like, holy cow, I just didn't. I mean, it could be, I guess, even business. It could be, who knows? Your answer might be QuickBooks, I guess. But is it the weather? Like what are those challenges that you kind of face, that again someone might not be aware of necessarily?
Sure. So a lot of it is, to make it in the wine world. I think it's really just a brand building exercise, and you have to have a high enough
Mm,
quality wine to be able to make it there. And within that, you better be making wine from grapes that are really good. So like I'm super lucky to have a spot where Pinot Noir grows incredibly well. My dad is my farmer and grows incredible grapes, and I'm trying to build a business off the back of that wine basically. And with that, I'm farming at the highest elevation in North America, and that comes with some problems. So, as I said, like I jumped into the winery and a wine business, basically started from zero with a bit of infrastructure for 2 years, and um, at the end of 2 years, I made two vintages of wine. Maybe timing's a little off there, but two vintages of wine. But what I knew was that the third year that I was going to make wine, there were no more grapes in Colorado. So we had a hard freeze in the fall of 2020 that basically froze out every grape in Colorado above the ground. The vines come back, but you lose a year of growing. And so
wow.
I'm here. I have not sold a bottle of wine yet. Um, my first year of winemaking, I definitely messed up a lot of wine because I'd never made wine before. And so I'm sitting here with product loss and not being able to make wine the next year from Colorado grapes, having to go search out for other grapes. Um, and knowing that I'm trying to build my business off the back of that local Pinot Noir, my family's Pinot Noir. And so lost an entire year, but I'm still selling the wine that I made 2 years before. So sell out the first year, just kind of realize that I have product market fit. People like my wine, I can sell it. The next year, I'm growing and I'm building brand. And so people know me as a great Colorado winemaker or Colorado wine producer. And just slowly building that reputation. But then the third year, I'm currently selling that 2021 vintage, and there was no Pinot Noir from it. So it forces me to like then step ahead and grab my 2022 Pinot Noir and start selling that. And this is where like the low time preference is really hard with wine, because I'm trying to build my brand off of that Pinot Noir. But if I just held on to that Pinot for another 6 months, it'll be even better. And when you sell people wine, there's so much like, it really reminds me of the crypto industry is the wine industry. There's so much smoke and mirrors and hiding behind like a nice label or words that people can't understand and just feel like, oh, wow, that must be classy. He must know about wine because he's using all these big words, that you can sell crappy wine for a lot of money. And so there's so much fear behind a wine label. It's like a black box in the bottle until you try it, that if you try wine from a brand once and it's bad, you're never going to buy that brand again. And so I'm always conscious of that, because I know waiting a little bit longer just increases the quality of my wine by doing nothing. And if I ever sell wine that someone doesn't like, they're never going to be a customer again. So I really always am playing on the edge of like, I need some money, I need some profits. And if I just wait a little bit longer, it's better for my brand. So it's like, I love the brand building aspect, honestly, like so much more than the sales and everything else. But yeah, I'm constantly like trying to push profits further and further into the future and just barely survive, which is also just like holding on to it. I think that's allowed for me to have a great mindset of holding Bitcoin too. So it's just been kind of it's been a really cool marriage between Bitcoin and wine. But I think this is going not on the top of your question, but it popped into my head, is that a lot of people talk about Bitcoin as freedom money, and there's the freedom to transact whenever I want. And there's just like getting to the level of having a fuck you amount of money by holding Bitcoin. And I don't really need the freedom to transact. I don't have issues with that. And I definitely don't have a freedom amount of Bitcoin. But what I do have is, if I ever decided to not be a winemaker anymore, if I ever decided like, hey, this isn't for me, I'm in it for, the love of the game, I want to do something else, I have 3 years of wine in my cellar, and I could just I could just stop making wine, or just start making wine from my family's vintage or winery vineyard, and just slowly sell what I have, that kind of eases the transition into the next phase of my life. And what I have to walk away with the winery is the Bitcoin that I've held. And no, like that can't be it can be like go lower in price, but it can't be depreciated. I just have that. And so that is my, like, I didn't get into wine because I loved wine. I didn't know if this was going to work into a lifestyle that I wanted, when that was the ultimate goal of what I was doing. But once I started stacking Bitcoin, it gave me that freedom, being like, look, if you walk away from this, you don't walk away with soft skills and experience. You walk away with something real financially, and you can move on to your next thing. And so that, knowing that I had something to, like, if I ever wanted to do something else, I can at least walk away with something tangible, as opposed to, oh, yeah, I made profits all those years, but I kept investing it back into the business, or I have this stock portfolio that I need to continuously manage. I just have this firm thing that if I ever walked away and wanted to do something different, I could just do it.
It's so cool. And it makes me think of one of my I guess not that playbook. I'm trying to think of how to say it, I guess, but like one of the, just going to the next phase. Like I had this in business for 10 years, where doing real estate, and it was just, things weren't making sense. And it's a lot of my story of why I ended up, coming to the Bitcoin space, over the last 10, 15 years. But it was, not being able to make sense of of what was going on. The goalposts continually moving. Obviously, the printing of the currency, the interest rates are moving all over, as every business owner is going to deal with, and well, every employee too. But being able to see that, really, real, hard assets were the key. And so you can see also why you were, with that low time preference to the wine, why you were able to start really grasping Bitcoin quickly. Not everyone has that ability or that experience to be able to start grasping it. But this phase two of the world for me is when the business cycle itself starts healing, where people are accepting Bitcoin back and forth in trading, or not trading Bitcoin, but spending Bitcoin back and forth with each other, transacting with it. And that's when I'll know the business cycle is really healed and it's safer to kind of get back into some of the waters, investing in more businesses. Like I'd love to own a Walgreens, a triple net business, and get paid in Bitcoin, or own an apartment complex where I'm getting paid in Bitcoin from the tenants, and so that's this phase. I think that what you just said made me think of that, where this next phase of where the Bitcoiners are going to go in the next 5, 10, 15 years, where the Bitcoiners that have that wealth are going to need to start putting it back into society and investing in real things and providing actual good services and products for people, like the wine, apartment complexes, whatever it might be. And it's not this like weird, fiat monstrosity going on. So anyway, that just made me think of that. But the thing I was saying earlier too was your business will really help things. And of course I went on a tangent with, the high level people you touch in the wine business, which is a really cool thing. And do you have any conversations with anyone, like orange pilling anyone, or like a high level winemaker, or maybe a super high ultra net worth person that's like, oh, what's this Bitcoin thing? Like what's going on? Any stories like that?
I definitely come into contact with a lot of the fiat wealthy by selling wine in Aspen, but they all still
Mm-hmm.
think it's a kind of a cute thing. Actually, just on Sunday, I had a guy, he tasted wine through the whole thing. Like, I really was like, oh, this guy's nice. He's not buying any wine this time, but I think he'll be back and he'll buy some wine. But like, smart, wealthy guy, obviously successful in his life. And his buddy comes up right at the end and asks me about the Bitcoin thing, the Bitcoin sign. And I'm like, yeah, no, those are my preferred customers. I offer 10% off to Bitcoiners if they pay in Bitcoin, and do whatever percentage of my business in Bitcoin. And he asked some stuff, and I brought up some like deeper cut. I was like, brought up how Trump was in favor of it and how the Biden administration cut off Russia when they invaded Ukraine. Kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that shows that I kind of know what I'm talking about in a lot of these things. And it was fine, like I'm not like looking for cred from them, but I was like, okay, we're having a little bit of a high level conversation here. And then the guy that I'm selling wine to just goes like, oh, I think it's just for criminals and drug dealers. And I'm like, I just said that like I do this percentage of my business in Bitcoin and it's my opt out. And he's like, oh no, you can just like opt out of inflation to other ways. And I'm like, dude, so people just are I think they're caught up in their own world. They don't the people who don't need it don't understand its value, understandably.
Right. It's a
But
paradox.
no, I'm not like reaching them because they don't need it. And within the wine scene, I think it's like a curiosity maybe at best with a couple people, maybe on the younger side. But if you're not already like buying Bitcoin or crypto, you're probably like still it's the same as everyone else buying it. And so my business has been around for 5 years, since 2019, and that is nothing in the wine game. Like there's been 50 years of wine in Colorado and people still don't know it exists. It takes 7
Jeez.
years to plant a vineyard and start selling wine from it. Like the wine game is just so low time preference. It takes so long
Mm-hmm.
that for me to have really any, like, I don't want to say credence because I think people take me seriously. It's just like, who the fuck am I? I've been in it for 5 years. I've done nothing as the scale of other people. Like, show me some real proof of work longer than half a decade. Like, that's nothing. And so I'm not worried about it. I know how patient winemakers are, how long things take. And it's just, I know that if I kill it, the first people that are going to see it are the other winemakers in Paonia, in my town, and hopefully they get a Bitcoin strategy, and then the people around that and around that. And so my goal really is to just like prove Bitcoin's value through uh, my own success, where people associate whatever I do, whatever I do with me. And if if I want them to get Bitcoin, I want them to see me as successful and say, "Oh, hey, what's he doing? He's successful. I want to emulate that," because I mean, that's just the way people think. And so if I can just be like, "Yeah, it's just Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin," then that gets more Bitcoin to my community, builds my community up more long term. And I'm in a town of 2,000 people where everyone kind of grows their own food, moves here to live a more sovereign life. And if I can get them on the path to financial sovereignty a little bit more, if I can just like be a spark for that, it obviously helps all them. But like if I look at it from like, why am I doing that selfishly? Is it makes my life better because then it makes my community stronger. And I seriously live on the back of my community. I get all my food locally. And if they're successful, I can be much more successful going into the future, especially just like knowing that there's going to be this massive financial issue, like calamity going forward. I don't want people to get screwed. So, like, I know I'm not going to be able to yell about Bitcoin and get people to understand it, but if I can just like be a successful person and just be like, yeah, it's Bitcoin. Like, I'm not crazy good at things. It's just Bitcoin. Um, Maybe I'll get more people on to go down that road.
I love that. I love that's such a phenomenal answer. What so you kind of mentioned this now, and it was something I was going to ask you, but the importance of knowing your own food, just where it's sourced from, what you're eating, food IQ, food intelligence. I'll come back to wine here in a second. But have you collaborated with any of the beef guys, the Bitcoin beef guys out there, or so I guess multifaceted question here, but any collaborations you've done in the past with other food products or services, and then also again just the importance of knowing that, is that something that I guess you really started coming into the last 5 years, or is that something you just always been doing? You guys always been eating locally grown stuff, source stuff? How does that kind of matured throughout the years?
So I was always around it, but I
Mm-hmm.
think no matter what your parents are into, it's really hard to get your kid to not rebel against that. And so, since my dad's life goal was
Yeah.
to grow all his own food, I rebelled against that and wanted to eat Lunchables growing up. And I had the,
Yeah.
I guess, conviction, stubbornness in that I would just like starve until I got whatever food I wanted. So, not whatever food I wanted, but like I would just starve as opposed to eat super healthy. So, essentially, I guess I rebelled against that, had really messed up. I didn't have good nutrition and needed to come back to this and find it in my own sense. So, diving down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, moving back to my hometown where there is a ton of this food, I started being into it, but then I found out about a Bitcoin and slash like ranching sustainability sovereignty conference, basically in my hometown, put on by a rancher who was a Bitcoiner, asked how I could be involved, and eventually put on a wine tour tasting for anyone at the conference who wanted to join. And at that, I met Texas Slim, Jason Rick, who is my rancher who put on the conference, and the Meat Mafia guys, Brett and Harry. And I remember meeting them and being like, I know that I need to improve my diet, nutrition, and health in order to take my business to the next level. I always had this like horrible brain fog that was just like making it hard to function, hard to work with what is like a ton of hours to get a business started. And so I met them and was just like, damn, you guys have an insane amount of energy. How do I get that? Like, that's what I need. And kind of just was on the point of like, oh, they eat a ton of beef. All right, I'll start eating a ton of beef. And then that started my journey of like learning about nutrition, learning about more animal based diet, and then also learning about the difference in nutrition and health in a farm raised animal versus a locally raised, like regenerative agriculture, regenerative ag animal. And that has just like led to better health changes, supporting more community farms. And the best thing about the farmers markets I go to is all these farmers want to trade for wine. And so I just trade wine for a lot of my food, which has also benefited my health.
Oh,
But grew up exposed to it, rebelled against it. And then when I finally came back around to it, it was a full embrace and I was like totally ready to take full advantage of it.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. What did so okay, back to wine now. What are some like, how do you test it? Well, it's always like the people are like, there's such a huge community of winos, and it's like, how do you test it? Like, how do you know you have a good wine? Like, what are the things that people should be looking for? Maybe the people that are know a little bit or know nothing at all. What are some things that make it, I guess, I don't know, valuable maybe, and that's I maybe sometimes different from like the value versus the taste of it, and there's different things going on there. But what do you look at from someone, again, who's been in the business? You're growing stuff, you're obviously testing things, and always trying to level up. What are the things that you're looking for in a wine?
So taste is totally subjective. If someone tells you, I've had like very expensive bottles, like worth thousands of dollars, that I thought tasted like crap. The next guy over, who was a sommelier, was like, "This is amazing wine," and I'm sitting here like, "All right, cool. Like it's wasted on me. I don't like it." And it's not like, "Oh, your palate's not sophisticated enough." Sure, maybe it is. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a wine nerd enough to totally, but like that's the thing, is that people come into wine, they approach wine and they're so scared of it because of the expert voice that other people have, the cost. And I shake people's hands all the time and they find out I make wine and the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, I don't know anything about wine." Like I don't care, first of all. And second of all, the only thing that I need to know when you have a glass of wine is, does it taste good? That's it. Do you enjoy this experience? And so when it comes to like finding good wine, a lot of it is just, asking questions, being open-minded, trying to learn, but also trying a bunch of different wines, understanding what flavor profiles you like. You can understand different regions and stuff, but like you don't have to go that far. You can find one and stick with it. What I tell people though is, you can like wine, just find a wine you like. But the biggest thing that you can actually control for is finding a wine that doesn't make you feel like crap afterwards. And
Mm.
in the wine industry, as I mentioned before, it's extremely shady. A wine bottle is a black box. There's 73 different ingredients you can put into wine without having an ingredients list on the label. So you
Wow.
can hide a lot of stuff in there. And that's the
Wow.
difference between my winemaking and most winemakers, is when a winemaker makes wine, like I'm saying actively makes wine, they are trying to make the wine taste a specific way. Some more than others, some
Wow.
control things more than others, some allow for more positivity and negativity based off the vintage. But the idea is that a winemaker is trying to make wine to taste a specific way, usually because, they're working for someone else who spent millions of dollars on this winery and needs to see a profit. And if you make the wine taste this specific way, it scores higher on this super subjective wine rating scale that has taken over the wine industry, commodified wine. And if you score slightly higher on that scale, it's the difference between millions of dollars. And so what that does is it forces the winemaker to modify a lot of things. There's different additives you can add for taste, texture, aroma, color, literally anything to change the wine. And you can hide it all. Everyone just thinks it's just wine in the wine bottle. It's not. And so it also commodifies wine, where like I can't tell you how many Cabernet Sauvignons specifically. I mean, our poster child is from California. I taste the bottle. I've never heard of the brand before, and they all taste exactly the same. And so that commodification of wine based off this singular rating scale just makes wines extremely boring. And on top of what I'm trying to do by not adding ingredients is let the grapes do their thing, which means different years I get different flavor profiles and different quality levels. And you can't get the super high quality wine without having a below average wine every once in a while. And so I'm small enough, I preach that loud enough that my customers kind of understand, and I'll probably price my wines differently if it's a lower year. But in big business wine, you can't do that. And so to look for wines that aren't going to make you feel like crap because they don't have the additives. And I mean like it's a huge difference in how well you feel. I don't even like think about getting a hangover when I drink wine anymore. It's just like, oh, yeah, sure, I went to bed a little bit late. Maybe I woke up a few times to pee because I was trying to hydrate before bed, but like um you don't get the headache or hangover from natural wine, low intervention wine, low sulfite wine, um, biodynamic wine. Organic wine is probably going to be better, but it refers to the grape growing, not the actual wine production. So there can still be a ton of sulfites in organic wine. I think that I generally, if I'm buying wine, I try and buy European wine, specifically French or Italian, because they're just generally known for lower additives. But from what I understand, there are rules that you have to add a certain amount of sulfites or something to be able to import wine into the United States. So it's hard to find high quality wine that's going to make you not feel bad afterwards. And
Wow.
that's like just like Texas Slim says with shake your rancher's hand, get to know your rancher. That's the only way to really know what your cow is doing before you eat it is you
Mm-hmm.
need to get to know your winemaker. Buy locally if possible. If that's not a good option or you can't find a biodynamic, natural, or low intervention wine in your area, just all you got to do is find one that you like and stick with it. Experiment every once in a while, but it's hard to find, and especially like then, like I said, taste is completely subjective. I think my wine's really good. A lot of people think my wine's really good, but plenty of people over the years have said, no, it's not for me. I totally understand.
Right.
And so you just with wine, it's a black box. It's hard to know. Every year is different. Find a producer you trust, you've tried their product, and just stick with it and try slightly different things every once in a while.
Wow, well, that was a masterclass, and I didn't know half of what you just said. So thank you, thank you for sharing that. That was awesome. It made me think of really quick, like a side question. Colorado, it's the elevation. Obviously, is that what's the highest elevation people grow grapes at? Like, what is that? Is it Colorado? Is it in France? Like, where? What? How does that work when it comes to growing?
It's elevation is just a part of your climate, and so it we're able to grow at extremely high elevation because it's sunny for 300 days a year in Colorado. I'm in a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of a banana belt, kind of tucked into the mountains, so I get the warm
Mm-hmm.
air and the cool air mixing, and it just works really well. So Pinot Noir is the only red grape that grows here. There's other varieties that just don't grow here, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
few whites that grow here. So you can grow grapes at a lot of different elevations in a lot of different climates, but it's very varietal specific. My area is the highest viticultural region in North America. So there may be an odd vineyard higher elevation than I am, but we're the highest like actual concentration of grape growers in North America. I'm at 5,700 feet. I have a couple neighbors up to 7,400 feet, really pushing the limits, growing different varieties.
Oh,
But there's the insanity is there's along the equator, there's some growers in the Andes that are at 20,000 feet, which is insane.
what?
And
Wow.
so high elevation, it does this with all fruit, but it really makes for vibrant acidity and very expressive fruit. So Colorado wine is always generally going to be a bit more fruit forward, a bit more of a fruity wine than that same variety grown somewhere else. The high elevation just makes it like very fruit forward, but the acid just has you coming back for more. When you drink an acidic wine, a
Uh-huh.
lot of times it like just produces saliva in your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and you just like what the if it's balanced but still high acid, it's like instantly you're like, oh my God, I need another sip. So it's very drinkable
Wow.
wine that's got a nice bit of fruit.
That is wild. What do you? How do you see Bitcoin um, changing? And this is a very like broad question in a way, so I'll ask you kind of two things here. But what advice to other Bitcoin business owners, and also how do you see Bitcoin changing the wine industry? And again, like obviously, it can change someone's balance sheet, but like even for yours specifically, like what is it going to give you the ability to do? Because we're talking about areas, right? It's geography, right? It's like it's not like a SaaS business where like, oh, I can scale infinitely, because it's the
Hmm.
computer. There's more. I can just use more gigs or whatever, more terabytes. You got, it's a specific area. It's an area where it can grow here. You can't do it over here. That type of thing. So like, how will it help your business grow, and maybe other advice for Bitcoin business owners out there?
So I think the way I see the my business in my life might be a little bit different than other people. Moved home to like my family's property, built a house here, want to raise kids here, and am building a business for um, the lifestyle as opposed to like to make a ton of money. I enjoy running
That's
a
awesome.
business, and so the size of my winery, I started small and I've been scaling up every year. And then remember, everything's on a 2 to 3 year delay. So a few years from now, or this year, last year, I've produced more wine than I'm selling this year, and hoping my business can grow to that point. Um, Knowing that if it doesn't, then I can just scale back. And it's really easy to scale back a winery. It's hard to scale up a winery. But
Mm,
throughout the 5 years, I've never known like how big I want to get. I've just been produce more wine, and I'll figure it out when I get there. Hopefully I'm selling more wine at that point. But I've kind of hit a limit in the size that I want to do it. And I think I enjoy that I can do pretty much everything myself, hire a few people, but I don't know if I really want to have a business with a bunch of employees and managing and putting out fires. I maybe some and take some things off my hands, but ultimately, like I kind of comfortable being a small business forever.
mm-hmm.
And being on a Bitcoin standard gives me a lot more confidence that I can maintain that. One, by yeah, getting paid in Bitcoin, but also um, I I can't even say like I've taken profit in Bitcoin, because it's just like I probably shouldn't be holding this Bitcoin. Like long term, yes, short term, no. Um, but of course I'm going to. So having that bit of buffer where every little bit that I can get now propels me further into the future, um, allows me to have a little bit more freedom as to how I want my business to be. Because as you said, it is relatively finite. There's some growth I can do, but to plant a new vineyard is 7 or 8
Yeah.
years of work before I see any returns. So scaling up to a point, fine, but there's not really a scaling up to be a massive winery in Colorado, unless I got a ton of investors, and even then, it's like there's some winemakers that live here um, that got investors and are making incredible wine, but I see their lifestyle, I see how stressed they are, and they're crushing, and they're still stressed, and I just am like, I don't want that. So Bitcoin gives me the ability to build at my own pace, and I think I understand not wanting to be public about your Bitcoin holdings, wanting to be a non. Um, a lot of that is like, man, also like if you're just super bullish on Bitcoin, of course you don't want people to know you have it. But I think that diving into the Bitcoin community is so rewarding, and from a business perspective is so much more of a non-brainer, a no-brainer going forward as the community grows in wealth. Um, there's people that enjoy everything in all parts of the world. And there's not a business that's the Bitcoin business of every product right now. And so I think I feel like I found Bitcoin at the perfect time where it was big enough to have a built community, people I could learn from and people I could dive into and kind of both learn from, and like what's enough people that would support my business through a Bitcoin lens that it sucked me even further into Bitcoin, and I can continue diving into that. Um, but it's also early enough that I don't know any other winemakers hardly. I mean, I guess I've met some that are into Bitcoin, but like no one else is like the fact that I'm the Bitcoin wine guy 5 years in to starting a winery is insane. Like that's the level of opportunity there was. And so
Yep.
there's so many different things like that that you can do. Wine is obviously like an insanely perfect product because people understand the low time preference. There's collection. You want high quality wine, and Bitcoiners are into the health aspect of low intervention wine. But there's opportunity for so many different things, and the community, like I said, is growing and becoming a more powerful class of consumers that it's yeah, sure, you can't do big business. You can't do the gigantic SaaS company and expect just to fill the Bitcoin niche. I mean, I guess there are, Bitcoin sales, Bitcoin wallets, like there are companies like that. But if you have a product, marketing something around Bitcoin and making sure that it's high quality, because Bitcoiners aren't going to spend their Bitcoin on frivolous stuff. It's, I'm going to spend my Bitcoin, and I think my customers feel the same way, that I'll spend my Bitcoin on something high quality. And if I know that the person or company that I'm supporting values what I value and is going to hold that Bitcoin, because I don't want to just spend my Bitcoin and have it be converted instantly to dollars. But if I can
Mm-hmm.
spend my Bitcoin and use that as a voting block that I want this person or company to succeed, I'll do it. And that's an extremely powerful thing for that company. So if you can instill that level of loyalty and that level of like conviction in your brand, in your mission, Bitcoiners are going to be there to support you along the way. And then you also have the power of Bitcoin. So it's kind of just a positive feedback loop that keeps getting more powerful and has a bigger network effect every year.
That's so cool. Love that answer. A couple, one or two quick ones here before we do a little word association to wrap up. I know we're getting towards the hour here. What do you mentioned kids? Do you have a family already? Do you have kids? Just future kids you're kind of planning, and also with those children, what are a couple things? It could be one thing or a couple things that you're like, yeah, I can't wait to teach the kids this, or some Ben's top couple lessons, if you will.
Mhm. I don't have kids, and I'm probably a few years out from kids. Assuming the girl I'm dating is the one.
Mhm.
Um, I always knew I wanted kids, and then within the Bitcoin journey, within building my business, and it was really moving to my hometown and building a house on my family's property. Where during that year that I was building that house, I was picturing my future kids running around playing in this place that I'm building. Um, that both confirmed it and made it feel like a lot closer, a lot more real, a lot more like, no, this
Mhm.
is the life I want. Um, so I think that the biggest things I think about is one, I grew up like on a river, just like go disappear all day, ride my bike into town. Like was given so
Love
much
that.
freedom because I live in a safe place where nature is the most
Mhm.
dangerous thing. And so I learned a lot of lessons just like on the way the world works, like dealing with failure. Like, oh shit, yeah, man, you got sucked into that fast current of the river. You better deal with it. Um, and I think that gave me a perspective of being able to live through failure of business, of like, hey, that's the way the world is. You're not going to get handouts. My dad also was worked for himself all the time, and I always saw my dad working. So um, I think that leads into realizing that I gained so much from seeing my dad's business, and then when we moved to the farm, seeing my dad work on the farm, um, that I always knew what hard work was, and I was always given the impression that the best bet is a bet on yourself. And so I want to instill that into my kids by showing them a business I'm running. And I gave the little bit of space in a previous answer that wine may not be the thing I do for the rest of my life, but I think it may just not be the main thing. And if I continue on and I decide that I want to scale down a little bit, I may just make wine from my family's vineyard as opposed to also bringing in other local grapes. Scale down the winery a ton because I think that I gained so much value from seeing my dad in his visceral work. He built houses, he farmed. I saw him doing that as opposed to sitting on the computer and working,
Yeah.
and money just like appears and there's not anything to like go look at. It's my dad built that, my dad planted that. And so having the physical winery, selling a physical product, being able to enjoy the physical product at dinner is pretty amazing. I think that's something I'd like to show my kids.
Yeah.
But having gotten to personal finance, learning about money, and then also growing up in a family where I sold blackberries as a kid, and so like I had a
Oh.
bit of entrepreneurial spirit all the way growing up. We just had like a random blackberry patch that I sold, and that money went to a bank account that I never learned how to use. And then when I was in college, my parents said that like I'm very thankful for this, but also I don't want my kids to learn about money this way, where it was like my parents paid for my college and they paid for expenses during college. Extremely thankful for that. But that meant I didn't learn how to budget, didn't learn how to do any personal finance stuff until after college. And I just sunk so deep into that. I loved it so much that I'm like bummed that I missed all those years of learning how to budget and personal
Mhm.
finance or invest before then. And since I never like saw the fruits of my labor, it was just like, oh, that money's going into your future account. Yeah, sure, teach a kid savings, but teach a kid the value of money by helping them understand how hard it is to make that money to buy that thing, so they value that different thing. And so, you know, I just think about like teaching my kids how to make money, so the entrepreneurialism, how to make money, and then how to value money by learning what you can buy with that finite amount of money, and how to budget and value different things over each other because you do have a finite amount of money. So it's kind of weird to, I feel like I've weird, maybe not with Bitcoiners, but I'm weird saying like, yeah, I want to teach my kids how to budget. That's so exciting for me, but it really is.
Oh, I love it. Well, that's definitely a lost art nowadays. That's for sure. Just look at the national government, or, the federal government for that. No better display of that. All right, last little one before we do a little word association. Bitcoiners love scarcity. We were just talking about Bitcoin trading cards and the wine before the show started. Do you have any plans for some more, scarce bottles, scarce collections coming out? One of 21s, one of ones, one of 121 collections, or whatever it might be. Do you have any plans for that here going forward in the future?
Looking backwards, I released my a wine that I named Satoshi's Reserve. It was the best barrel of my 2021 vintage, and I signed every bottle, numbered every bottle up to 210, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of that was my like, all right, I'm going all in on this Bitcoin thing with my product, and Bitcoiners really loved it. That was the best thing I've ever done with my business, was this one barrel of wine. And so I'm going to be looking to do stuff like that going forward. Um, with wine, there always is scarcity. And so while I may always have a Pinot Noir, or occasionally there are years I don't, each year is different. So if you really
Mm-hmm.
love the 2022 Pinot Noir, you better buy some more, because the 2023 is going to taste slightly different. And so playing with that collectability in wine is so prevalent that it's a little bit of education of like, yeah, look, every year is different. If you like this wine a ton, buy it, because as I sell more of it, there's no producing any more of that vintage. So the price is going to go up over time. Um, I do have plans. I'm working on just like kind of a more like everyday Bitcoin label. It's still, a nice wine. It's high value, but it's not the $210 per bottle that I was selling the Satoshi's Reserve for. This is
Mm-hmm.
a little bit higher quantity and a little bit more approachable. It's not meant to be that, like, it will age well and definitely hold on to it, but it's not meant to be that bottle that's like, yeah, hold on to that. That's a collector's item. But given the success of the Satoshi's Reserve, it's something that I'm definitely considering doing, in picking my best barrel of each year and setting that aside and naming that Satoshi's Reserve every single year. So the variety of grape will change, but the idea is that if it's going to be named after Satoshi, if it's going to be his reserve, it's my best barrel of wine. It's the best you can get from my winery every single year. There's other stuff like, it's the smallest like differentiation in wine quality I can do is about 300 bottles. So 210, I was left with less than 300, but a few extra bottles that I've just drank from my personal stash, as like bottles that I'm going to set aside and keep, but never sell, because like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to devalue the 210 bottles of Satoshi's Reserve. So I just like lost 90 bottles on that I can't sell. But
Mm-hmm.
since I can't, about 300 bottles is one barrel. That's the smallest differentiation I can really realistically do. I do want to do some like cool 21 bottle sets, or
Yes.
maybe a little bit bigger than that. But that's, at that point, it's all marketing, it's all branding, it's all the label. Yes, it's high
Yep.
quality wine, but you can buy that same wine for cheaper, just in a different label. So
Yep.
it's something to play with, but it's like you got to be clear that it's a marketing game at that point. Like, hey, do you want this
Yeah.
cooler label to put on your shelf? Here.
Yes. Well, that's where we're gonna have to talk some Bitcoin trading cards, artwork, labels, Peony Lane wine. There we go. So we're going to have to
Hmm.
make some magic here over time. Love that. Cool, great stuff. All right, let's wrap here with a little word association game, a little lightning round. I'm gonna throw out like 14, 15 different words, and then just shoot off whatever comes to mind. So it could be a word, could be a sentence or something like that, and we'll rock this out. Satoshi Nakamoto.
I'm so happy. I'm just so happy that um, Satoshi is anonymous. And like I don't have to worry about anything coming from that ever.
So true, so true. Uh, Personal development.
That's just life. That's what we're all here for.
The FDA food pyramid.
Um, one of the bigger lies I've ever been sold. And man,
Elon Musk.
I have mixed feelings. Mixed feelings for sure.
Yeah.
Don't know. It's like the reason I'm happy that Satoshi is like I don't know. I just don't know what to think about him. I don't know what to think about him. Thankful for X, what it is now, but like people are people. So
Family.
that's all there is, man.
Politics.
Great sports.
Citadels.
I mean, that's like what I'm in the process of trying to build. That's what I'm trying to orange pill my community for.
Love that. Wine snobs.
The problem.
uh, Faith.
I think something that with something that gets a really bad rap from a lot of people, um, and I have a hard time accepting hard definitions of faith. But I really value everyone's individual sense of faith.
I like that. Gary V. Give Gary Vaynerchuk and Wine Library TV.
So I've never watched Wine Library, but someone
That's
turned me
old.
on to
It's
Gary
old. I don't blame you.
Vaynerchuk. No, I mean, but like someone turned me on to Gary Vaynerchuk right as I was starting my business, and um, wow, he's like been such a massive part of my life in like understanding the flows of business, understanding like the mindset, and then just marketing advice. One of my proudest, he followed me on Twitter. I'm one of like 21,000 people he follows, but
No way.
uh, fuck, like Gary is someone that gets a really bad rap in the Bitcoin circle because he has NFTs, he messes with
Yeah.
other cryptos, and I don't think he doesn't fully understand Bitcoin because he's not a he's not that's not what he does. He's a marketing guy,
Right. Yep.
but he's like one of the most down to earth, amazing people in the world, and one of my favorite people to follow.
Great answer. Government run schooling, aka public schools.
Really happy I went. Don't know if I want to send my kids there.
Love that. Same boat. Entrepreneurship.
Not for everyone. I think you know if you're an entrepreneur, and if you're not already kind of pushing that direction, you're probably not.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. Bitcoin trading cards.
Something I don't understand, but I see how other people value it, and I think it's really cool what you guys got going, man.
Thank you. And Peony Lane wine.
That's like I think that's my family legacy.
So cool. So cool. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for coming on today. You passed. You passed. So you passed the quiz at the end. So thank you so much for coming on today. Being a playable character in a sea of non-playable characters. Just so cool. Like I learned a bunch from you today that I didn't know about wine and just so many things. So I'm sure there will be many people learning stuff from this episode. So thank you so much for spending your time with us, being a playable character. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, find me on Twitter is my most active social at Justman. And you can order wine all over the United States at peonylanewine.com, Peony lanewine.com. I'll be starting my wine club here coming up, which will both give you discounts on wine. It's a bit of a subscription, but it's just trying to make sure that like my preferred customers get preferred access. As I said, wine is something that is inherently scarce. Every single year is different. I'm constantly selling out. So being a wine club member will get you access to endangered wines that are about to disappear, basically my old library, as opposed to just the wines in the current vintage.
So cool. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on and spending time with us today.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Playable Characters Show, brought to you by Bitcoin Trading Cards. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the future Bitcoin and financial experts we have on the show. Plus, we will be doing random big giveaways throughout different moments of shows of collectible cards, sats, merch, and more from guests, so you won't miss anything. This show does not constitute any investment advice, only freedom advice. Everything you see here is opinions from the host and the guests themselves, nothing further. Please don't trust, verify. For full transparency, I do lead marketing efforts at Bitcoin Trading Cards where we are trying to spread freedom to all of humanity and orange pill the world one collectible physical trading card at a time by making things fun and easy to talk about that normally make you want to cry. You can reach me directly through my email, brandon@btc-cards.com, with any inquiries or playable character suggestions. See you on the next one.